The film starts with a shot of the neighborhood and then moves to a bedroom where an alarm clock is ringing. Mike is shown in bed. He turns off the clock and gets out of bed. Mike then goes to make himself some coffee. He then sits down to work on his laptop, but something in the window catches his eye, and he gets up to see a young lady who is moving into the house next door. He walks out to take a look, and the lady's apparent husband arrives in a sports car. He gets out of the car, kisses his wife, and then comes to meet Mike. He also calls his wife Jenna to greet Mike. They have a pleasant conversation, and Mike even invites them to a barbecue as a welcome to the neighbors. Scott, the neighbor's husband, then hands Mike his number and asks Mike to call him whenever the plan is final. Mike's wife Lisa arrives, and he tells her about the new neighbors. He tells her about the invitation. She is annoyed by the prospect and says that he should have asked her first. Mike says that he could call it off, but his wife says it's okay. Later at the barbecue, some neighbors are invited. This is the first time Jenna and Mike properly have an interaction. She comes to him for a steak, and he asks her about how long they have been married. Jenna replies that they have been married for 4 months but had been in a relationship for a long time. Jenna also asks Mike about what he does and even asks him to come over to take a look at their backyard as it is a mess. Later that day, Mike and Lisa talk about the couple, and it seems that Mike doesn't like Scott as he thinks that he is a jerk. On the other hand, Lisa thinks he is funny, but Mike negates the compliment. That night Mike is working on his study when he goes to the window. He sees Jenna and her husband having a private moment. He continues to watch, but Scott closes the blinds in their room. Mike then goes to bed and tries to initiate intimacy with his wife, but she tells him that she is not in the mood. The next day, Mike continues to look through his window on and off and sees Jenna in the backyard. He goes over and starts talking about their backyard. He advises her about her backyard and tells her that he will even help her with selecting the plants for the garden. Jenna asks him about his family, and he tells her that he has a son who is probably about her age. Jenna then talks to him about her own life and that she doesn't want children right now. The two flirt a little, and then Mike says that he needs to get back to work, but before he leaves, Jenna reminds him that he will have to go to the nursery with her. Later that night, Mike is once again working when he sees his neighbors fighting. It turns out that Scott is, in fact, an abusive husband, and all is not well in their marriage. The neighbors go on, but Mike continues to look out the window. The next day, a friend of Mike's visits and they see Jenna tending to her backyard. Mike's friend comments that she is the perfect match for Mike. When Mike hesitates, he says that there is no way that Mike has not thought about being with her. He then asks Mike why he hasn't cheated on his wife yet, but Mike just brushes these comments off. He even tries to convince Mike by sharing his own tales of infidelity. The man even says that if he hadn't done these things, he would have probably harmed his wife or himself. That night, he engages in intimacy with his wife, yet envisions Jenna during the act. The following day, Mike once again gazes out the window, observing Scott and Jenna playfully interacting. Positioned by the pool, Jenna, clad in a swimsuit, endures Scott's repeated advances. Mike continues to watch, however, he eventually rises, leaving for his garden to gather vegetables, all the while hearing his neighbors quarrel. The sound of their dispute persists, accompanied by a resounding thud. Secretly peering over the fence. That night, Mike's son returns home, and they exchange greetings. Following dinner, Mike returns to his study and once again peers out the window, observing the neighbors sharing a romantic dinner in their backyard. The subsequent day, Mike and Scott share a cordial interaction. Scott attempts to persuade Mike to consider purchasing a better car, and Mike notices Jenna heading out for yoga. Mike subsequently embarks on a grocery shopping trip and later contacts his friend. He meets his friend at a bar, sharing details about the neighbor's abusive relationship and suggesting intervention. However, his friend dismisses the idea, attributing Mike's concern to an interest in Jenna. Upon returning home, Mike finds Scott conversing with his son and wife. An invitation to swim is extended, though Mike and Lisa decline due to work commitments, while their son expresses willingness. As Mike works in his study, he catches sight of Jenna and his son swimming together. Later, Mike confides in his wife, expressing concerns about Scott's character. Lisa appears puzzled by Mike's assertion, prompting him to suggest being cautious around Alex, their son. At a later point, while in the kitchen, Mike observes Jenna struggling to dispose of a box. He offers assistance and brings up the recent argument between Jenna and Scott. Jenna dismisses the dispute as trivial, attributing Scott's behavior to stress. Mike suggests Scott avoid drinking if it triggers such behavior. Their conversation is briefly interrupted by Alex, who offers his help. Mike is then shown working when he receives a call from Jenna, inquiring about their trip to the nursery. During their outing, Mike regales Jenna with a humorous tale, evoking laughter. The topic shifts to smoking marijuana, and they decide to indulge at Jenna's residence. Amidst their shared experience, Mike comments on the intensity of his high. Jenna admits infrequent use due to nervousness, finding solace in Mike's presence. Their conversation resumes, with Jenna confiding in Mike about Scott's temper and her doubts about their marriage. Jenna divulges her initial reluctance to marry Scott and ponders whether it was the right choice. Mike advises against having children with him. Jenna expresses regret over her marriage, prompting Mike to assure her of his support in whatever decision she makes. As their interaction deepens, Jenna embraces Mike, finding comfort in his presence as she sheds tears. The two end up kissing, but Jenna suddenly stops, resulting in an awkward pause. Mike gets up, suggesting that he should probably leave. Later that night, Lisa informs Mike that she was considering starting yoga since Jenna offered to take her. She playfully teases Mike about Jenna, suggesting he might have a crush on her. Annoyed, Mike insists she shouldn't make it about him, turns off the lamp, and goes to sleep as his wife's smile fades. Mike resumes work in his office and observes the neighbors spending time with Alex. During dinner, Mike expresses concerns about Alex interacting with Scott, which annoys Lisa. The next day, he hears the neighbors fighting again, this time with Jenna screaming and a breaking sound. Mike leaps over the fence and rushes to their house, discovering a broken vase and Scott talking on the phone. Mike explains his concern for their well-being, leading to a heated confrontation between him and Scott. Mike returns home and recounts the incident to his wife, but she becomes frustrated and asserts that he should have involved the police instead. Mike defends his intentions, emphasizing his desire to help. Later that night, Lisa confronts Mike, expressing her inability to cope with his behavior. She requests that he leave the house. Mike spends the night on the couch and then packs a suitcase to leave. Just before departing, he goes to Jenna's house and knocks on the door. Jenna reassures him that she's okay and intends to leave Scott and move to San Diego. Mike discloses his plans to leave and invites Jenna to stay with him once he finds a new place. Jenna acknowledges his offer but expresses reservations about the situation. She thanks him for his help. Mike checks into a motel and calls his son, Alex, informing him of the separation. Alex mentions that Lisa believes Mike is experiencing a midlife crisis. Mike advises Alex to take care of his mother and spend time with her. Mike's friend visits him, suggesting he try dating sites. Despite the suggestion, Mike contemplates reconciling with Lisa. His friend persists, encouraging him to explore other options. Mike reveals that Jenna has left, but his friend informs him that he saw her at a gas station with her husband. Troubled, Mike begins to stalk Jenna's online profile. He eventually returns home and knocks on the door, only to find nobody there. He enters with flowers and overhears laughter. He spots Jenna with Alex and devises a plan, beckoning Alex for assistance. Jenna joins them, and they discuss her decision to stay in town. She reveals she's pregnant and things are looking up. Jenna then leaves. Mike enters his house and starts preparing dinner for his wife, hoping to engage in a conversation about their current situation. Mike is taken aback by Lisa's response and her request that he leave. She quickly exits the house, leaving him alone. He proceeds to have dinner by himself, and as he contemplates the situation, he notices Jenna outside having a smoke. Concerned for her well-being, he approaches her and gently suggests that smoking might not be advisable during pregnancy. Suddenly, Scott emerges, raising his voice and insisting that Jenna go inside. Seeing her with a cigarette, he angrily knocks it from her hand and attempts to force her indoors. Mike intervenes, urging Scott to calm down, but Scott angrily accuses Mike of inappropriate involvement. The tension escalates as Scott throws a can of beer at Mike and grabs Jenna's arm, causing her distress. Mike steps in to protect Jenna, pushing Scott away. Dazed but determined, Mike regains his composure and rushes inside to ensure Jenna's safety. He confronts Scott, demanding that he leave, but Scott lashes out again, knocking Mike down. As the altercation continues, Scott blames Jenna for the situation. Meanwhile, Mike seizes a nearby golf club and uses it to subdue Scott, ultimately knocking him unconscious. Jenna is shocked by the turn of events, urging Mike to leave the house. She reaches for her phone to call for medical assistance for Scott. Mike slowly retreats to his own house, gazing at his reflection in the mirror. Deep in thought, he heads towards his backyard where he tends to his garden. His mind begins to clear as he picks a tomato from the plants he nurtured. Lost in his contemplation, he is suddenly aware of approaching sirens.